some of this Bernie and Rogan stuff. Let's see. What do we got here?
One thing on stock speculation tax that Rogan is kind of impressed by. Something on redefining American greatness, and then UFOs.
Wait, where? Oh, here's
the stock speculation one came in after.
Oh, okay. That's where I got confused. All right, let's listen to number 10. This is a big deal. I mean, it's good that Bernie goes on the show. This is one of the biggest shows that are out there of people who are, I mean, just broadly speaking, it's one of the biggest, podcast online shows that exist. I mean, I don't know, the specific numbers, but they're very close, consistently in the top of the podcast charts. And on YouTube, it's huge. And it's good news. It means that Bernie's out there looking for votes where he can find it. He also, of all of the shows that he could have gone on to reach these people, this is the best of those, I think. And certainly Joe Rogan in the wake of talking to Cornel West, I think is like... at the very least, exposing his listeners and viewers to a whole new set of assumptions and ideas.
This is not addressed. When we talk about making America great, wouldn't fixing the worst parts of the country be the primary concern? The less people that grow up in a terribly disadvantageous position from birth. Wouldn't that be an important thing? And what can you do to resolve that?
Well, Joe, I think you said it better than I can. I think you're right. When we talk about what it means to live in a great society, a great nation, a nation that we're proud of, I'm afraid there are some people who have incredible wealth and power who say, what's great is that we're seeing a growth in the number of billionaires in America. Isn't that terrific? And we got one guy who's worth $155 billion. How great. Oh, by the way, we're building more nuclear weapons. And we're spending $750 billion a year on the military. Isn't that extraordinary? And by the way, do you see the yacht that billionaire has? It's 3 miles long. Isn't that great? Your point is that we have to, I think as I understand what you're saying, we have to redefine what being a great nation is about. We are not a great nation when we have 40 million people living in poverty and in despair. We're not a great nation when we have massive levels of income and wealth inequality, when 87 million people can afford to go to a doctor today. So to answer your question, I think that as a nation, we have got to focus a great deal of attention on those distressed communities. Often they're African American, often they're Latino, often they are rural white communities. And that means making sure that the kids there get the quality education that they deserve, making sure that we're creating good paying jobs in those communities. I voted against NAFTA, permanent normal trade relations with China, and other trade agreements because I knew that those agreements were written by corporate America with the goal of shutting down plants in this country and moving abroad. And the result of that has been the loss of millions of good paying jobs and the complete destruction of communities all across this country, in the South and all across this country.
What's fascinating to me is that, and I don't get a sense of where Rogan is on this, like to how much, and I'm using Rogan only as a surrogate for some cohort of his audience. Sure, there's a bunch of his audience that don't care. I'm sure there's a bunch of his audience that sit and refute what Bernie says, but there's a bunch of his audience that I think are probably, like Joe, probably wondering, wait a second. How does the idea of measuring the greatness of the country as a function of how well it does for the most amount of people possible versus how well it does, how far into the stratosphere we can send specific individuals, right? Like in the context of healthcare, do we have a great healthcare system if princes from foreign countries come here to get a liver transplant or whatever it is, some type of procedure they can't get anywhere else? Or do we have a great healthcare system because the entire population has better health, better outcomes, et cetera, et cetera. Now, these notions, I don't know if they're mutually exclusive, but in the context of our system, they seem to be. Because when you incentivize providing super uber care for the wealthiest amongst us, that's where your resources go. And they're not spread around. Now, maybe there's a system, maybe, where you could have the best in the world and provide to the most people. It's not inconceivable. I don't know how durable that would be, but so what? So what? The question is how are you going to measure what is the definition of a great country? Is it one that produces, the most billionaires and has the most elite healthcare and has, I don't know. It's like, how do you judge whether a country creates longevity? Do you measure the oldest living person, or do you average it out amongst the entire population? In Bernie's mind, and I would argue probably everyone here too, it is when you average it out. Is everybody participating in the success of the country? And the more people you have participating in the success of a country, of a society, that's the definition of success. And many of the people who go on that show say the opposite. They're not quite explicit about it. But all of the examples they cite of our greatness as a nation are a function of what an individual can do. We can grow the biggest billionaire in the world. I mean, it's like, okay, am I going to dedicate my garden to growing the biggest watermelon and suck all the resources out from the entire garden into creating this one big melon, which if you know anything about a watermelon, you got a certain limited amount of time where you can eat it. And if you can't eat all of it, then most of it's going to go to the waste. Or am I going to have just a series of smaller watermelons throughout the garden that we can pluck and enjoy watermelons through a much longer season? I'm just saying that because
it's very evocative.
Well, I had a lot of watermelons for the kid today. I got like a seedless one that goes like this and a yellow one. But I mean, that's basically what it comes down to. And it's fascinating. It's going to be fascinating to see like what this does to Rogan's outlook, because only presumably, right, it's some reflection on what's happening with his audience. And we're talking about several million people. So that's not an insignificant number of people.
Yeah, like I could actually see this moving the needle for Bernie a little bit.
Who knows?
Considering how huge his audience is.
Who knows?
And how many downwardly mobile millennial males are probably in it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, if I would be surprised.
It's going to help. It's super smart.
I would be surprised if somebody came to me and said like, oh, did you know that Rogan's key demo, 70% of his audience is like women from ages 38 to 48. If someone told me that, I would be really surprised.
So, Joe, the first time I was doing
is.
DMT, we were in Burlington. It was outside of a ski lodge. Great mountains, great air. Jane's there. I'm there. I looked inside of her, and I realized we're all part of the same DNA structure. And if we're all part of the same DNA structure, why should Jeff Bezos take up so much more of that DNA? It's really a very simple concept if you think about it.
We have one more clip.
On that.
What was the other clip with the Wall Street? Yeah, okay. And I imagine we're going to see along the themes of the clip that we just watched, where we define success based upon how many people enjoy that success versus how many people, what size of success a limited few enjoy. Here's Bernie talking about Wall Street.
In one piece of legislation, or two actually, is to make public colleges and universities tuition-free, cancel all student debt in this country. That will cost $2.2 trillion, a lot of money, over a 10-year period. We do this through a tax on Wall Street speculation, which will bring in $2.4 trillion. We bailed out Wall Street 11 years ago. And by the way, these are crooks on Wall Street who engaged in illegal behavior. Taxpayers, against my vote, bailed them out. If we can bail out Wall Street, you know what? We can cancel student debt and provide public colleges and universities tuition free.
When you say a tax on Wall Street speculation, what exactly do you mean by that?
It will be a tax on all of every sale of a tax. People buy and sell stocks and bonds all of the time. We have a very modest tax on that. And by the way, it will have an impact on speculation by cutting back on the high frequency trading, which we now see.
So you would just, there's no current tax on this?
Correct.
So you would put a small amount and that would do the job? That would
raise more than enough money. It's a very small tax. It exists.
When you say small, how much?
It depends on the nature of the transaction, but it's less than 0.5%.
Really?
Yeah.
And that would cover?
Because the amount of stocks being sold,
Right.
bought and sold. And this is not, again, a new idea. It's being done in countries all over the world.
There it is. I mean, the financial transaction tax, it is essentially like a sales tax, except for it's much smaller because there's so many of these transactions. Understand, too, that a lot of these transactions are actually run by machines, and maybe the majority. I don't know, like just automatic programs that just run. And there is the cutting into the amount of speculation and the amount of trades would undoubtedly be a benefit to the stability, I guess, of the market. But nevertheless, it's like, look, the theory has always been like, if the stock market is doing well, then the country's doing well. Well, no. There's less and less correlation, and this could actually be a way of correlating it a little bit, because there will be a material benefit to the benefit that people are getting on Wall Street. Lastly, let's just play this last clip from Bernie. This could be the one that ends up getting him the most votes on his appearance on Rogan. And this is where things get a little freaky deaky.
So I'm going to let you go because I know you got very important things to do. One last question. If you got into the office and you found out something about aliens, if you found out something about UFOs, would you let us know?
Well, I'll tell you, my wife would demand that I let you know.
Is your wife a UFO nut?
No, she's not a UFO. No, it's just, Bernie, what is going on? Do you have any access to records?
You don't have any access?
I don't. Honestly,
No?
I don't know.
Okay. You let us know, though?
All right, I'll be on the show. We'll announce it on the show. How's
Please.
that? All right,
Please
you got
do.
it, Joe.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
All right, Joe. We get
I
it.
should have asked him to do that on this show.
Would you let us
when we did it.
know if they
He
were
saved that one
aliens?
for last
Yeah.
in case he decided that question was stupid and stormed out.
Right. Smart. There it is.
Bernie's not
so
gonna storm
another
out.
reason to vote for Bernie. He will let you know about the UFOs. All right, I'm going to race.